The Force will be with you, always.
Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Nick Anastasiou, story editor on Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Bad Batch. And you are listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
Here we are finally, ladies and gentlemen, here on Aggressive Negotiations in our second season rewatch and analysis of The Mandalorian as we count down to The Mandalorian and Grogu coming into theaters. We are at the episode of episodes that we were all waiting for. Chapter 13, The Jedi. Ahsoka Tano graduates from animation to live action. I am one of your hosts, Jedi Master John Mills, and joining me for this very important episode that expands the universe in so many ways and winds up setting up something else, Jedi Master Matthew Rushing. Matt, are you ready to buckle down and go to a dreary planet and examine the episode, The Jedi?
Well, John, I'm just so excited to be here for this very special episode, and I hope all the kids are watching because we have a very important message for you. Don't do drugs. Drugs are bad. Just say no. When Jesse Spano took those speed pills and just was so scared, it left a mark on me with that very special episode. And so, anyway,
I definitely think that I'm grateful that The Mandalorian has never had an episode like that one. And there are certain very special episodes that I remember from shows I watched as a kid that can't even be aired now because though their heart was in the right place, in retrospect, everybody went, wasn't necessarily the best way to convey that message.
Exactly.
But here we are with the Jedi. Everybody knows where they can find us. Okay, go out on the socials, at the Jedi Masters on X, at Join Nerd Party. You can find the Nerd Party on Facebook and Instagram. We're all over the place. We're on Spotify. We're on YouTube. We're on whatever network it is, except TikTok. For some reason, we are just afraid of TikTok, and I think it's because we have not yet invented the Jedi dance, but we'll keep working on that behind the scenes. So here we are with Chapter 13, The Jedi, the episode that the minute we heard in the Heiress Ahsoka Tano's name mentioned, we were like, when are they going to get to the Cracker Factory? And this episode kicks off, and we've got doings happening, and we've got white lightsabers showing, and we've got a new actress playing Ahsoka. Matt, how ready were you for this episode, and how excited were you when that opening happened? Like, take us back to the first time you saw it, and then here on the rewatch, does that opening still elicit the same emotions out of you?
I mean, I think yes. And the reason for that is that immediately this episode actually sets itself apart from all of the other episodes that we've had in The Mandalorian by being so stylistically done. Like, there is a clear style that is happening in this episode that didn't happen in any of the other episodes, right? It is evoking all of the things to which Lucas and Filoni kind of look to for inspiration. Specifically, Lucas, with all of the inspiration that you would have gotten from something like The Hidden Fortress or Yojimbo or any of those other Kurosawa films that Lucas was so fond of. And this episode, in many ways, too, with its muted color palette and all that kind of stuff, actually plays along the idea of like almost kind of the more black and white look, too. That, everything about this episode is setting itself apart in that way to introduce us back to this character that so many people either had grown up with by this point or, like you and I, had just kind of fallen in love with the Clone Wars. And yet I just remember like watching Rebels and jumping up and down when Ahsoka Tano came down the ladder, right? Just being so excited that she was alive. And then just the same thing, when she showed up later on. And then the fact that to know that we were going to get her here was so incredibly exciting for me. And it's such an interesting episode opening too, just to be able to see one Jedi at work in a situation like this, and the lightsabers coming on, taking somebody out, and everything goes dark again, and then taking somebody out and everything goes dark again, and she disappears into the mist. And it's just, there's something so evocative about everything that's kind of happening in this. And then her having this confrontation, with this magistrate and telling her she's got one day to basically figure her stuff out or she's coming for her. And it's like, that is an opening.
It's an incredible opening. And I love the fact that it immediately brings the idea of the Jedi that we learned to love in the prequel era coming back. That this is not Luke who has just come into his Jedi rank, if you will. This is somebody who is old guard, somebody who's used to taking on huge tasks by herself, just using her wits and her abilities. And I love what you're saying with the sabers and the disappearing into the shadows, because this is a very, very vibey piece. And it does successfully evoke the that feeling of the old movies that really did inform so much of the visual language of Star Wars. But additionally, I think that this is one of those ones where the volume works extremely well, because there is not a tremendous amount of clarity needed in the backgrounds. So a little fuzziness, a little fogginess completely works to its advantage and actually makes the set feel larger, because my eye accepts certain things more willingly than other stuff. And so set extensions and stuff like that work a bit better this way.
Agreed.
And I think there's a real lesson there for it about how, where the volume is most successful. But where I absolutely love this show is how much it remains dedicated to using Gen X icons in supporting roles. Carl Weathers as Grief Karga. And then honestly, having, Giancarlo Esposito,
right?
Having Werner Herzog. And then in this episode, Michael Biehn showing up.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, yeah. I mean, at a minimum, everybody's like, Johnny Ringo. But everybody else is like, Kyle Reese. Also in The Abyss, arguably still James Cameron's greatest film. But whatever. That's just me. So I'm right. Stop making that face. You can't see the face he's making, ladies and gentlemen.
We're not going to have that
anyway.
fight because that movie's terrible. But anyway.
Oh, geez.
Just god awful.
You know what? It's not. Anyway, what I find very interesting about this is the episode where we find out Grogu's name.
Yes.
So take me there. Like,
yeah.
What was your reaction when you heard Grogu for the first time? I remember my reaction. What was your reaction?
I didn't really know what to expect for the name, right? I mean, we've known Yaddle and Yoda, but to expect that, every species like this is every person of the species is going to be a Y name is silly. I think it was just one of the most interesting things since that reveal that, the child was of Yoda's species in the first place, that we were going to actually play with this thing that we've never played with before and possibly get to learn more about the most elusive species in Star Wars, the one we know the least amount about. yeah, I mean, to get the name, I mean, I didn't have a problem with it. I think, that they had run into that we all just called him Baby Yoda for so long. But I think Grogu works. And I think what actually makes it work is I was watching this episode again, and my wife was watching with me. And that first moment where Ahsoka tells him Grogu's name, and he says, Grogu? And Grogu just goes, huh? And makes the little sound, and like looks over, to Daddy, because he's got his name said for the first time by the guy he considers his dad. And it's so adorable. And it's so real too, because one of my coworkers at the church, they have a young son who is almost 1, and so he's walking and he's really starting to talk a little bit now and everything, and so you say his name and he looks over at you with his big eyes, and that's exactly what they pulled off with Grogu as a character here, and I think that's what helps you buy the name regardless of what it is. How are you feeling when they dropped it? And is it something that's like, yeah, you just accept it now, or do you still feel like, I don't know, does that work?
No, see, I had a similar sort of thing where I was like, Grogu, and it's like, my reaction was basically, well, what did I expect it to be? What expectation did I even feel going into that? I was like, it was more of a, okay, because there wasn't like a thing where it's like Yoda Jr., like it wasn't a name like that. So it's like, oh, right. Yeah, okay, that's his name. I agree with you. The way they play it helps sell it very much. And I try to keep my brain away from the fact that no matter how much we've learned about Grogu since, I want to know who picked his name. Because a name implies parentage. And that usually parents pick names. Or was he left on the doorstep? Because there's still, like you said, he's part of a species that in Star Wars they've purposely left elusive. There's so much about Yoda that we love and we don't know.
Well, yeah.
And I think that's great. But I think if anything, it leaves even more playful mystery about it, because I don't think we'll ever know who named Grogu. Why would we?
Well, and I think that there's something incredibly interesting about that process as well with this episode, because we are learning a lot about Grogu's past in this episode. The fact that he was at the temple, that he had been trained by many masters in the sense, and we get that sense right when we see the younglings at the temple and they're being trained by the different masters. Yoda might be doing this class and somebody else might be doing this class, and Aayla Secura is doing this class. And, so he had apparently too been there for a while, and getting this sense of the way in which this species lifespan works, that the process of training and all of these things is going to take a long time, but it also gives us this opportunity to understand about this character that he has repressed most of what he had learned at the temple because of the trauma that he experienced during the Clone Wars. And during his being saved from the Jedi Temple, and then the subsequent basically bouncing around all over the place until somehow, he ends up in the hands of the client. And so what's great about the episode is how much it gives us, but every single piece of information they give you through Ahsoka about Grogu just raises like 10 more questions. And I think that's the beauty of the way that this is written, because it gives you enough, but then it continues to build on that mystery to where it's like, wow, I can't wait to, the next time we find out more about this character's backstory.
Well, yes. And I think that there's additionally a tremendous thing because we know that the Jedi, the big thing is about giving up attachment. And we know, and this episode visits very strongly the fact that Grogu is having attachment issues. This is, like you said, Daddy says my name. He sees himself as the Mandalorian's son. So we get this big thing again where it's like, oh, I'm supposed to take him to the Jedi to be trained. And there's a very interesting parental thing there where it's like, there is, obviously this isn't a one-to-one sort of thing, but there's always a societal sort of thing. You see a lot of parents struggle with it. I'm doing this because my kid is supposed to do this. My kid is supposed to play sports. My kid is supposed to study this. My kid is supposed to do those things. And I think that there's a really beautiful meditation here on the fact that it's about you're there to help the kid figure out what they want to do. You're not there to tell them what to do. And, so there's that struggle, that tension that immediately really comes into focus because once Grogu has a name, there's an implied agency to him. And so that's going to be a difficult thing. And I think that is a really beautiful thing. I think additionally, when we get to the assault on Evil City, let's just call it Evil City, at the end of it, really interesting fight. I love the droids that they use in the fight. I love the fact that it's the frightened townspeople. I love even, and it's inevitable because it's Dave Filoni thing, that there's a very implied Fangorn Forest Orthanc sort of vibe to what's going on, where the forest around has been laid waste for industry. But we get to this beautiful fight. And I mean, I got to say, you know what, judge me if you will, but a bit of a crush on Diana Lee Inosanto at the end of this episode, because I guess I have a liking toward the evil ladies, and especially ones that can fight. And so seeing that fight between her and Rosario Dawson, I thought was great. But we're talking about mystery. We're talking about answering a mystery with Grogu. And we're talking about setting up other mysteries about Grogu. But then during that fight at the end is the line that shook me to my core, where Ahsoka asks, and you know what I'm about to say, what was your reaction as soon as you heard Ahsoka mention that name, Thrawn, at the end of this episode?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the most exciting things that had happened in The Mandalorian up to this point. And, I think we talked about last episode that one of the things that was happening in that episode is that you played with the larger whole of the series, right? And the big questions and story points that come from The Mandalorian itself, in the sense of the show that we've created and the stories that we're telling here. And this was the biggest example of the Mandalorian series saying there's larger stories at play with characters that and we're giving you a taste as to what those are. And they have to do with storylines that if you've been watching Star Wars for a while, especially the animated series, this is going to make a lot of sense to you as why Ahsoka would be looking for Thrawn. Because the last time we saw Thrawn, he had disappeared with Ezra. And so it just opens up all of these wonderful, can of worms that you just can't wait to get more of. And so, and also, I mean, look, again, having just reread the original Thrawn trilogy and that series still holding up and still being good and in many ways kind of being everything that we wanted the original follow-up to the original trilogy to be, this also says, hey, well, we're in that time period, and we just mentioned that name that you loved from those books. And that means, and in some ways, there's a promise being made to the fans here saying, yeah, we're going to do something with that. So enjoy it. And it's just such a wonderful tease and promise. But at the same time, and I got to say this before I ask you, what you thought of it. I think what it does best is that it doesn't overshadow the story that we're telling for The Mandalorian, because Ahsoka won't train Grogu, but she has an idea of a way to possibly find somebody who might for them, and then sends them on her way. And so we do two important things. We set up a big storyline outside maybe of the show The Mandalorian, but at the same time, we continue that storyline going, and that's greatness. That's what you want. That's what you need from these type of shows. And so, what did you think? When we said the name Thrawn,
I was practically like, I had the same sort of reaction I had when Maul showed up at the end of Solo: A Star Wars Story that my family famously made fun of me for, where like my hands shot up to the side of my head and went, what?
Yep.
Like, did I hear that right? Like, I was so excited about it because Thrawn is, you mentioned on the last episode, the Heir to the Empire trilogy, Thrawn has been a part of my life in one expression or another since 1991. Okay, that's a long time. He's always been one of my favorite characters that Star Wars ever created. So to hear him mentioned in a live action show as a tease for where Ahsoka's going next, I was it was paralyzing how much I loved that moment. And still do. I look forward to it. I'm just waiting for it. I'm just say it. Thrawn. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely love it. Agree with everything you're saying. Like it expands things out, but it expands things out in a smart way. My question for you, as we're starting to wind down, honestly, my question for you is, when she said, "I know of a Jedi," right? Like, what was your where was your head going? Where were, how excited were you getting at that point? Like, what was your speculative brain starting to do at that point?
Yeah, I think that the beauty of her saying, that then again, there are not many Jedi left. And I think, obviously the Jedi that we know of that is left is none other than Luke Skywalker, right? That would be the other Jedi that comes to our mind. We're like, oh my gosh, are we going to go there? And I think that's kind of the beauty of the show, right? In the sense of okay, we've already gone to Ahsoka, which who thought we were going to do that? Did anybody think we were going to kind of go there with this show? And now it's like, oh, well, you thought Ahsoka was great. What if we give you the hint of like, it could be Luke Skywalker? And you're like, what? So I think that there's something that they're doing in the series here that's great in that sense. And it's really exciting then, as a fan, where you're like, oh my gosh, we could be doing the thing that I've kind of always wanted to see. And I think, not this isn't just a slam on, the sequel trilogy in general, but, for those who had grown up, right, with the EU and getting the opportunity to experience Luke Skywalker as this wonderful hero where we really got to dive into his stories and see him become the man that we all wanted him to be, and see him get to be a Jedi, right? I think that's the kind of the beautiful part of that idea of like, oh my gosh, we really might we might be going there. And that to me was just incredibly exciting. And, again, there was a huge promise there that they were making that I hoped that they would fulfill, because I did want to see that. So I don't know. What about you, John? How did you feel at that moment? Did you feel the same way, or was there any trepidation for you?
No, I think that I thought to myself, in all honesty, there's no way they're going to do Luke. Like, because immediately I'm like, my first thought is like, she's got to be talking about Luke. But then another part of me is like, there's no way they're going to do Luke. And I think it's just sort of like a reflex that I have sometimes, where I'm like, I'm so used to movies not giving me what I want.
Yeah.
And instead of being like, no, you want this instead. Yeah, no, that's not what you want. That, like, I sort of have trained myself to keep my expectations off. I don't want to go in and be like, oh, they're going to bring Luke back, and then be sorely disappointed when I get to that episode and be like, oh, I mean, yeah, Stacey Tin's cool and everything, but like, I thought he was dead, right? Notice I didn't say Plo Koon, because I would have thought Plo Koon would have been cool too, and would have been an Ahsoka tie. But like, we all know Plo Koon died too,
we saw that one happen.
Well, we saw the ship explode.
Yeah,
and we saw
that's
it go
what
down
Dave
and crash,
said, and
but we don't.
And George was like
exactly.
laughing at him. So
Yeah, well, it also reminds me of a joke headline from The Onion that way back in my first blogging days over on the StarWars.com blogging part of the site, I borrowed the headline from The Onion that they made up for, the backdated made up. Elvis dead, ... Is Elvis alive? And I said that about the fact that, I mean, to this day, I've got people saying, well, Mace Windu could come back. And I'm like, no, he can't. No. But it's like one of those things where people have just like gone into that sort of thing. If Plo Koon or Stacey Tin came back, it'd be like, this is kind of stretching it, guys. I don't know. But yeah, I was just sort of like reflexively conditioning myself to be like, don't even entertain it. Like, just be open to it. Just don't try to hope for anything, sort of stuff. Because same thing you were saying, wanting to see the Luke that I knew he should have been after Return of the Jedi seemed a bit too much to hope for. But the
other thing about this episode too that it does is that it gives us a piece of information about the time during the Empire, Morgan Elsbeth and her work here on helping supply what the Empire needed to keep its Starfleet going. Fascinating stuff there that builds that part of the world in just one line. I mean, you've got little things in here like the HK-87 droids from the Knights of the Old Republic game, the assassination droids. That's in there. I mean, there's just all of these moments where, and then the idea of Tython, right? This planet at the end that we're going to send them to. And, that's something also that was in Legends with the Dawn of the Jedi series. And so all of this together, I think, this is one of those places where we talked about last week where you're just kind of opening the toy box. But what I love here is that the sequel trilogy was afraid to touch anything it felt like Legends-wise.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like, no, if it was interesting or good or whatever, well, it's already there. Let's use that and utilize it for our purposes and our story. And so all of those things that we get here in this episode that reference things from Legends, but they're utilizing for their purposes, it's like, that's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. But this episode, of course, resolves. Mandalorian still hasn't completed his mission to reunite Grogu with, quote unquote, his kind, the Jedi, the magic wizards that the Mandalorians aren't huge fans of. And we're setting up another episode, but let's not tip it off too much. Let's save it for next week. So, Master Rushing, where else can people find you out there in the wilds of the internet?
Well, of course, you could find me all over social media under the name Matt Rushing02. I am here on the network with a completed show called Owl Post, talking about every single chapter of the Harry Potter series, one chapter at a time. And then over on the TFM network, doing a bunch of shows talking Star Trek stuff with Chris Jones. So I hope everybody will enjoy those and check those out. And then you can also find me on the 602 Club as we talk about all of the franchises that we love outside of Star Trek. John Mills is a frequent guest over there, and plenty of great episodes for people to be able to listen to. So yeah, do that. But John, and you're not trying to figure out, again, where you're. You may have had a evacuation of those wonderful macaroons while we were flying, and now you need more. Where can we find you?
Well, you can find me co-hosting a show called House Lights here on the network with Tristan Riddell and Darren Moser. We have a time. It's a lot of fun. Go on over and give it a listen. And you can find me out on the wilds of the internet as Kessel Junkie, preferably on Letterboxd, a network that I love to spend my time on. So with all of that, Master Rushing, we're barreling toward chapter 14. This season is almost winding down already. What is happening? But, I got to prep myself emotionally for what's about to happen because, man, something happens in the next episode that really is a tragedy. There are two tragedies. And we'll decide next week which one is more tragic. And so I think it's time to close these negotiations.
John, negotiations are closed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.